I want to broaden it because I think the other really important point of this, and I think that there's a lot of different interesting debates that people can have about Antifa, and to me, I think part of it is just like branding things properly, and I think that there's things to actually even learn, frankly, from even examples of sort of like dual tracks in a place like Northern Ireland. But we can get into that at maybe more so later on. But I just want to really underline that when you open up this real lens of looking at who is actually infringing on not just free speech, but really broad set of civil liberties, there have been in the last couple of years a set of local initiatives by Republican state legislatures to, as an example, in North Dakota at the height of the water protector protests, where people, of course, were protesting on behalf of native sovereignty and ecology over the interests of another predatory colonial, energy company. There was private security there aggressively monitoring people hired by the state. There was a bill in the state legislature to essentially make what that guard did legal, right? Which is that essentially if you hit a protester, you can get away with it. There's been bills in other parts of the country to make people responsible for like horrific, exorbitant fines if they engage in nonviolent civil disobedience because, well, that has an effect on the economy. So you actually have this whole other ring of areas. And again, I think it is actually a real shame that these people have turned rhetoric like free speech into a joke, because these things actually do have some importance. They actually do have significance, where regardless of where you're coming from politically, it would be delusional to not acknowledge that. And they have turned it into a joke, even as legislatively these things are actually being seriously encroached upon at the same time, of course, that we have ICE kidnapping children.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Just to go back to the legislation that you referenced, Rhode Island was one of the states that had proposed legislation that would allow for drivers to hit protesters, right? So they wouldn't have to worry about criminal charges if they happen to hit a protester. And the reason why I bring that up in the context of Rhode Island is not only because of what happened to the protesters, but also because Rhode Island was one of the states where state lawmakers who happen to be Democrats were in favor of it. And I bring that up because we need to, and we've, I think, done a decent job as progressives in holding Democrats accountable when they're wrong. But these are people who need to be primary. They need to be challenged, and they need to be voted out of office because they are anti-democracy. They do not represent true left-wing values, and they don't represent constitutional values or constitutional rights. It is absolutely disgusting that anyone would sign on to that type of legislation. Luckily, it's been shelved. I think that it would be challenged in the courts anyway, and who knows how that would go, considering how right-wingers have really stacked the courts against us over the last few decades. But we're dealing with something incredibly scary, and I'm not the type who likes to fearmonger, but we really need to take a step back and think about the rhetoric that's being used, the way these types of instances of violence are being covered in the media, and more importantly, just like the lack of outrage that I'm seeing when it comes to this type of behavior. One other thing I wanted to note is that when Andy Ngo was, assaulted by some members of Antifa, immediately there were individuals who were arrested. In the case of the protesters nearly getting run over by this prison guard in Rhode Island, he didn't get arrested. The district attorney is considering it. He's looking into it. He should have been arrested immediately. If any one of us did what that prison guard did, we would be arrested immediately.
What do you make of the lack of outrage?
I think a few things are happening. I think the news cycle is constantly flooded. So no one's talking about El Paso anymore. Right. I mean, the person who carried out that mass shooting had a racist manifesto posted online, pretty soon before he committed that act of violence. No one's talking about it because the cycle's flooded. And it's something that I think a lot of people are grappling with on a daily basis. I mean, I feel guilty because I don't know what to focus on. I don't know how to strategically put a rundown together in the most responsible way possible. Because again, as soon as you think you have the right rundown of stories, there's something egregious happening. There's some news story. The Trump administration floods the cycle, which is why in a recent episode of No Filter, I kind of lost it and, went off the cuff and went into this rage because the big story was, Trump saying racist things about Elijah Cummings. And the big debate was, is Trump racist?
Right.
Can we please stop having that damn debate? Yes, he's racist. Got it. We don't need to cover every tweet. We don't need to cover every controversial thing he says. He's a terrible person. We all know this. We need to be more strategic in what we cover, how we cover it, and we need to figure out a way to apply pressure and continue applying pressure so we get real change.
You've just watched a Michael Brooks show video, and you can watch all of our full main live shows every Tuesday night at around 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and subscribe to get all of the clips you want. We're covering the globe. We're focusing on international relations, the intellectual dark web. We're having fun. We're doing deep dives with a lot of amazing guests. Of course, become a patron for the whole thing at patreon.com/TMBS, or subscribe to this YouTube channel and help us keep growing and get that content out there. Subscribe below.